The bullet struck a hole through the werewolf's chest. The impact knocked him away and also freed Zheng and Yingkang from his hold. The monk said immediately, "Don't go out. Shit, they have a sniper. Manavia, use the shield." He waved his hands at the werewolf, Zheng, and Yingkang. The serpent appeared above him again, its head had recovered. The monk's eyes went out of focus, signaling he entered the unlock mode. Both of the serpent's heads began moving this time, one head went for the werewolf and the other went for Zheng and Yingkang. As the serpent was about to reach Zheng, with another loud bang, a gauze magical bullet struck its head. A translucent force field appeared in between the bullet and the head but only for an instant before it shattered. The bullet still hit the serpent in the end. Of the two women standing behind the monk, one was Shinea who had her eyes closed the whole time, and the other was wearing an Arabian face veil. Her body shivered then said, "Leader, can't block the bullet. It's too powerful." The monk answered without turning around. "Yes, even I can't see the bullet's path, it should be a sci-fi weapon. Didn't expect Team China to have people with sniping talent. I was too careless, luckily the shield still blocked half its power, that's enough." The other serpent head had brought the werewolf back into the museum by this time. The one that was shot lost a third of its mass and was no longer able to bite Zheng. About 7 seconds later, another shot crushed the remaining head into dust, this time there was no force field to block anymore. 7 seconds take 7 seconds to reload. Shinea, enter my mind and share vision with Lamu Lamu, remember you only have 7 seconds to aim and attack. If you fail, then the sniper can wipe us all. Our lives are in your hands. The monk looked at the only other man behind him, a young man with slightly dark skin like a typical Indian. He nodded then held a white needle in his hand, the same needle that took Tenji's life. Go. The monk began to count time in his mind. He saw Zheng trying to get up from the ground and ordered the serpent's remaining head to attack again. Another bullet struck it and crushed the head. As soon as he heard the bang, he charged out of the museum and began looking around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Found him. Lamu. He looked at a tall building on the east and yelled. The young man kept his eyes closed the whole time. When he heard the words, he threw the needle at once. The needle disappeared right as it left his hand, but at the same time, another shot came from that building to the east. A bullet struck the monk's left shoulder, just centimeters away from his heart. Even so, the bullet still broke off his arm and knocked him several meters away. Zheng had disappeared with Yingkang by this time. Lamu waved his hand, the needle came back to him stained with blood. But he frowned. Didn't hit a fatal spot. When I was about to hit him, something interfered with my mind, just like being controlled by Shinea. The monk picked up his arm and muttered. The feeling of danger disappeared. Even if he's still alive, he should be critically injured. The sniper isn't a threat for now, Shinea, stay here with charcoal. Lamu, go chase that sniper, I need to see his body. I will go chase the one that reached the second stage of the unlock mode. That's their leader. Shinea, track them and send their position to our mines. At the same time, Zheng ran into the valley carrying Yingkang. Lan was waiting there with tears on her face. As soon as she saw Zheng, she ran over and took Yingkang from his hands. Follow me, O'Connell knows the shortcuts to the center square are you still okay? Zheng's back was pierced with the scalpels and was soaked with blood. But he smiled and said, not a big deal, wait a moment, let me stop Yingkang's bleeding. He took out the hemostasis spray from his ring and sprayed Yingkang's shoulder. Lan carried Yingkang quietly and led Zheng through several civilian houses. Soon afterward, they saw O'Connell and the other characters waiting in a small empty area. They ran up to Zheng immediately and began asking questions, but Zheng yelled, don't stop. O'Connell, lead the way. Hurry, we are still in danger. Right behind us, they're still following right behind us. There were too many shocks today, no one was bothering to ask questions right now. O'Connell ran deeper into the valley as soon as he heard Zheng. Evelyn, Jonathan, and the curator followed right after. They watched Zheng as took out some mummy pieces and sand from his pocket, then raised the Book of the Dead and chanted the spell Tenji taught him before his death. As the blood energy channeled into the book, the mixture grew in size and finally became several mummy guards. Zheng waved his hand and the guards ran into the valley. Lan asked him, what danger is behind us? They caught up to us. Zheng nodded. I can't be sure, but I sense danger from behind. Hope these mummy guards can delay them a little more. As they heard his words, everyone raced behind O'Connell, crossing over houses and valleys. After they jumped over 2 civilian houses, Evelyn asked, O'Connell, is this what you mean by shortcut? Going through people's houses? Are you really a British gentleman? Don't you know this is bad manners? I am British, he replied as he ran. But not a gentleman. At least unlike a gentleman, I won't just kiss you. Haha. Evelyn's face flushed. She cursed him inaudibly but still followed right behind him. The other people laughed as they saw their banter. This was the only light-hearted event during their escape. Then a house not far away from them collapsed. They're here, Zheng muttered as he looked over it. He held onto his knife so tightly that his fingers looked pale. The serpent had recovered its heads, making the mummy guards unable to close up on it. It bit 2 of the guards, then knocked them against a wall, instantly crushing the whole house. But the remaining 2 guards still jumped at the monk without fear. Yet the serpent moved too fast, it caught both guards when they jumped at the monk, then crushed them with a bite. Shinea, their location. The monk said into the air. As soon as he said these words, a map of this area appeared on his mind. Zheng's group was running in this map. They were getting farther away from the monk, but it seemed like they were slowing down. They reached their base. Good, we can wipe them all out at once. The monk laughed coldly. The serpent lowered one of its head and the monk jumped on top of it. Then the serpent turned invisible, making it look like the monk was floating in the air. He was floating towards Zheng in a straight line, crushing all the houses on his way. Zheng's group had totally stopped in place in his mind. They were waiting on an empty area without buildings. Perhaps they were planning to go all out against Team India. Planning to go all out? Good, it'll show you the hidden power of the serpent. Without stopping a bit, the monk charged into that empty area. Then a bolt of lightning shot from right under him to where Zheng was standing, exploded a large rock on that spot. But no one was here, this looked like just a normal empty spot. However, the map on his mind still showed that Zheng was right under him. They were just standing here without moving. He couldn't find any traces of them even after he came down from the serpent. They disappeared. Shinea. What's wrong? Where are they? The monk shouted. After a bit of delay, a voice entered his mind. Leader, someone hacked into my mental network. I can't sense their location. He calmed down and said, what about Lamua? And that sniper? He got away. One more thing, Leader Minima just stopped breathing. Herat also returned to human form. Come back fast, I fear that he may not to make it either. The monk took a deep breath and roared. His face looked distorted, just like an Azura from hell. All that was left in his eyes were frenzy and anger. Zheng's group actually wasn't running very fast. Fortunately they had the acceleration and stamina buffs from Lan. Otherwise a normal girl like Evelyn wouldn't be able to handle this much running. O'Connell knew the city inside out. They were getting closer and closer to the center square. At the same time, Zheng let out a sigh of relief. Lan asked anxiously, what's wrong? They getting close? Zheng smiled. No, the danger is over. I don't know why but the sense of danger is gone. It seems like they aren't following us anymore. We can finally breathe easy now. The clock tower entered their sight and in front of them, Ji was carrying Zero as he sprinted toward the tower. A blood-soaked spot on his chest. Yinkong checked Zero's injury and said calmly, the needle went in between his lungs. It didn't damage his lungs and was far away from his heart. Just that there is some extravasated blood in his chest. I can't do open chest surgery here so he will feel some chest pain in the upcoming days. Though it shouldn't be much of a problem. Yinkong checked Zero's injury and said calmly. Zheng sighed. Compared to his injury, I am more worried about you. How are you right now? The newbies were shocked when Zheng and the others came back to the tower. Tenji died, and the rest were critically injured. This generated fear in the newbies. This was their first movie after all. Yinkong recovered extremely quickly. She regained most of her mobility after reaching the tower, but the arm that was bitten still couldn't move. As the one most knowledgeable on human anatomy, she naturally took up the job of checking Zero's injury. Of course, her injury seemed even worse. Yinkong looked at the shoulder missing a large section of flesh. I need hot water, needle, threads, scissor, alcohol and gauze. I recall Egypt has a traditional medicine for physical injuries. It would be best if you can get it. Zheng took a deep breath and said, I'm asking how is your injury, not telling you to fix it all by yourself. We will help you get all the tools for the surgery. Don't worry about anything else. Yours and Zero's mission right now is to rest until you regain the ability to fight. Yinkong was surprised. The blood vessels and tendons on the shoulder were torn. The bones are possibly fractured. There's no way to recover this arm with the technology of this world, at least not within the next several decades. This arm is useless until we return. Everyone became silent. Especially when they looked at Tenji's body, they felt a sense of despair. Zheng recovered immediately and shouted, Team India isn't much better off. This is the world of horror movies. Anyone can die here. Maybe I will also die on the hands of my enemy or a monster. The only thing we can do is try our best to live. Although they were still feeling down, it was better than the despair from before. Zheng said to O'Connell, we are not familiar with Cairo. Please help us buy the tools necessary for surgery. Hung and Liang, go with O'Connell. Remember to stock up on food and drinks too. Meat. Yinkong suddenly said. Meat gives energy. Buy more lean meat. O'Connell brought the two of them out the tower. Evelyn planned to go with them but Zheng stopped her. When he mentioned Imhotep, she dismissed the idea. After everything was said, Hunglu said, tell me what happened. I've been paying attention to the watch. 10 minutes ago, I received notification that one person in our team died, and we are down 1 point. Then 2 minutes after, one person on the other team died. So our current score is 0. Don't skimp on any details. Zheng had the two newbies go with O'Connell intentionally. So even if they were to get killed, the team's fighting power would still be there. Although they would be down 2 points, this was still the better choice. As the leader of this team, he had to make the choice. This all seemed so similar to Xian's methods. He immediately wanted to have a talk with Hunglu. The boy's analytical ability was what is most needed in the current situation. After Hunglu asked the question, he described the fight in the museum. Especially every detail on the enemies, their possible abilities and roles, and the werewolf's destructive power. Hunglu knelt on one knee and twirled his hair. Based on your descriptions, there's a 70% chance that the muscular giant died. The other possibility is the werewolf European doctor. Of course I prefer the doctor to be the one. The giant's arm completely recovered, so this doctor possesses medical abilities we don't have. Let's analyze their fighting powers. Herat's close combat ability is above Yinkong. If you fight him one-on-one, how likely are you to win? Hunglu muttered. Zheng thought for a bit. If I go all out, entering the unlock mode and all other conditions considered, I may win, but the most likely outcome is we'd both get injured. The werewolf's power and speed is higher than the second stage of the unlock mode. Is that so? Then there is the Indian monk. He can summon a double-headed serpent, but his base power level doesn't look too strong. At least, we can crush the serpent with magical bullets. I think he's definitely hiding some power. Probably a power that can't be used too frequently. So he probably won't use it unless that is his only choice. This is the only explanation on why he can become the leader and not the werewolf. Aside from these two people, I am most concerned about that needle. It killed Tenji and injured Zero. The user possesses long-distance sniping ability. He will be a threat when we fight Team India. The biggest threat is One of the two women can use a defensive force field. This is a very strong support ability. The other is our biggest threat, mind control. As long as she's alive, we won't be able to beat Team India. Zheng massaged his temples and said, this means we are not at a complete disadvantage. Honglu shook his head with a smile. Not quite. Even though we are at a disadvantage, but only slightly, not wholly. In contrast to them, we have an advantage that they don't, especially now that the giant is dead and the werewolf is heavily injured. We exceed them in close combat strength. As long as we can fight them in a confined space, then you will be our hope for victory. Honglu pointed at Zheng. Zheng pointed at himself with surprise. Don't kid me. I know how much I am capable of. Maybe I am strong when I go all out, but you can't really expect me to do so every time. Plus they won't give me the chance. That monk-summoned creature is strong. If I fight it inside a valley, it can destroy the surrounding walls and houses with ease. They also won't put their support members in a place without safety. So your plan? Honglu continued. There's a place they will definitely go. A place that can't be destroyed, at least they won't do it, that's narrow, with many tunnels. Once you get a chance to close in on them there, you will be unstoppable. The Necropolis Hamunaptra. That's the place where you can bring out all your power. It has numerous tunnels and mummy guards. Your Book of the Dead can control these mummies. Even though they may not pose a huge threat to Team India, but they can give them some trouble. The only thing I am worried about is that woman with the mind control ability. Zheng was overjoyed when he heard this. He was confident even if he had to go against the werewolf face to face in a confined space like the tomb. But he sighed when Honglu mentioned the woman. That mind control is too terrifying. Tenji was controlled by her before he died. Even I was controlled for a brief moment. That feeling was like my consciousness separated from my body and I could only look as my body moved on its own. It was a horrible feeling. Not only this. Lan interjected. Zheng, do you still remember the chase? The sense of danger kept following us. I suspect that the woman was following us with her mind. Just like after we caught the cyborg and they were still able to find his location. I think that woman has a tracking ability. Honglu nodded. Right, your reasoning is logical. It can also explain these 2 points, but I am curious as to, how could you have returned safely? Are they planning to camp outside the clock tower? Zheng shook his head. No, I am not sensing any danger nor feel of being tracked. I believe we are really outside her reach. Or perhaps someone helped us block the tracking. Zheng and Lan looked at each other, then they both turned to Ji. He was sitting there looking very tired and didn't seem to pay any attention to their conversation. Honglu noticed Zheng's strangeness and said, then this is set. In order to beat Team India, our first step is to kill that woman. Otherwise, everything we do will be useless. The only plan I can think of is going to Hamunaptra before Imhotep and Team India join up. We must get our hands on the Book of Amunare before Team India. Then we need to kill that woman out in the desert plain. We have to rely on Zero for this. His sniping range is over 10,000 meters. We have to kill her before she can react. Though I am worried about the needle user. He may counterattack as soon as he finds Zero. But we must kill that woman at all cost, even if it means trading 1 for 1. Otherwise we will lose the team fight and get wiped. Zheng listened carefully, then sighed. Then Zero. Honglu shook his head. This is the only way, we can only see if he's willing to or not. The chance for life or death is about half and half. Furthermore, Zero must go alone and snipe them on the way in order to not delay the rest of us. We will go to Hamunaptra without stopping, so even if he is to get injured, we can't help him. A calm voice injected. Assassins always go alone to begin with. The target is only that woman, right? Everyone turned around and saw Zero sitting by the wall. He touched the gauze on his chest as he was talking. Zheng looked at him deeply, then asked Honglu, then? What should we do? It's simple, afterwards we'll obtain the Book of Amunare before they reach Hamunaptra and take away Imhotep's immortality. Then depending on the situation, we will fight Team India to the death or return immediately after finishing our mission. We will have the upper hand no matter what. Zheng nodded and said with certainty, good. Then we will enact this plan. After O'Connell comes back, we will. Before he finished the sentence, footsteps closed in from outside the door, then. Bang. O'Connell kicked open the door. Following behind him were the 2 newbies. The 3 of them were each carrying a large bag. Everyone in the room raised their guns in shock, but after they saw that it was O'Connell, they let out a sigh of relief. O'Connell said in a hurry, F***CK. This world has gone mad. Several families that died in Cairo, their bodies came back to life. And also some people who were still alive suddenly died then came back to life. Cairo is filled with these living dead corpses right now. This scene also happened in the movie. When Imhotep recovered the majority of his power, he would raise the dead into walking corpses. Even some living humans would get controlled by his power. When the plot advanced to this point in the movie, the main characters were forced into a dead end while the curator got killed by the zombies. Hung and Liang came into the room too. Hung said, this isn't the only thing. This MOV, ahem, I have also seen it. Wasn't it only raising the dead? Magical bullets should be able to take them out, but some of the corpses had flesh peel off and the sand and soil formed armors and weapons for them. They look like. O'Connell continued his sentence, yes, those skeletons look just like the mummy guards you summoned. 3 or 4 out of every 10 corpse became like this. We almost got found out when we came back. They seem to be searching for something. I hope they haven't found our hideout. Zheng sighed. The plot changed. We are in a horrible situation. Honglu then pondered. I am curious. What is Team India's mission? To revive Aang Sunamuon. And what is our mission? To eliminate Imhotep. This doesn't seem to make sense. They are almost put into the place of Imhotep's ally, but we are put in such disadvantaged position. This just isn't reasonable. Perhaps we are forgetting something. Suddenly they heard the tweets of a bird by the window. It was a white little eagle standing on the window. The man in black waved his hand, and the eagle landed on his wrist. He took off a piece of paper from its claw. After he read it, he took out a piece of paper from his pocket and tied it on the claw. Then the eagle flew out the window. Powerful strangers. My tribe and I are the descendants of the pharaoh's bodyguards. We've been guarding Hamunaptra for several thousand years to prevent Imhotep's resurrection. We are willing to sacrifice anything to defeat him. Rest assured, we have assembled our men on the way to Hamunaptra. Whether it is Imhotep's army of the dead, or the strangers attempting to revive Anksunamun, our tribe vows with our swords and glory to stop and destroy them. The man gave his solemn vow. The second movie. Zheng and the others said. In the second movie, the Medjay sent all their warriors, over 10,000 cavalry, to fight the army of the dead in the desert. Their performance was astounding and totally defeated the first wave of the army. So even if they were to fight the endless numbers of zombies and mummy guards, they would still be able to put up a fight. Yes. They have Imhotep and the mummy guards. We have our allies' help. We won't lose. We won. Even though this new force isn't individually strong, but their large number was able to affect the ending of this movie. Hunglu then made adjustments to his plan for the new ally. Zero was assigned to a location not far off from the cavalry. When the cavalry intercepts Team India on the way to Hamunaptra, he will snipe during the chaos. The chances of them finding out Zero's location during such chaos would be slim. At the same time, the rest of the team would have enough time to enter the tomb and obtain the Book of Amun-Re. Once they take away Imhotep's immortality, they will be in a favorable position. Since the plan was set, everyone decided they would take a small nap after eating. Then they would go over to the port and seize a ship. They could definitely reach Hamunaptra before Team India does. Of course, the safest way was intercepting them with the cavalry. And it was best if the cavalry could kill them. During the meal, Yingkong took a first aid kit and a bottle of alcohol out the door. Zheng saw it and sighed, then followed her out quietly. Yingkong climbed a few steps up the stairs of the clock tower, then opened the first aid and took out a scalpel. The one that's watching over there, come over and help, Yingkong said calmly. Zheng scratched his head and walked over a bit embarrassed just in time to see Yingkong cut open her shirt and expose the white skin underneath her neck and that scary injury on her shoulder. The werewolf's teeth contain some kind of virus. The injured area around my shoulder has lost all sensation. In the legends, people that are bitten by werewolves will get infected and become werewolves themselves. Even though the virus he has isn't as powerful, this half of my body is almost paralyzed. See this injury? The flesh that's become black is infected with virus. Help me cut it out. Yingkong was still calm as she said this. She lit an alcohol burner and heated the scalpel over the flame. When Zheng walked over to her, she handed him the scalpel without a word. Zheng calmed down then looked at the scary injury. A large area of skin and flesh had turned purplish black. It looked horrifying. The hand that was holding the scalpel began trembling. Yingkong said light voice. The last person that helped me do surgery was my comrade. We were in the same team during training and in missions. But he died under my own hands. As an assassin, many people will gradually become insane due to the killings and the cruelty of the training. Just like that werewolf Erot. When an assassin can't handle their ordeals and they changed, that's when they would be made to disappear. Erot should end the same. Zheng took a deep breath and when he breathed out, his eyes went out of focus. He began cutting out the black flesh little by little with speed and precision. The scalpel danced over Yingkong's shoulder. A minute later, the floor was scattered with black flesh. Zheng's precision was incredible in the unlocked mode. The cuts didn't even touch the uninfected flesh below. After all the black flesh was gone, dark extravasated blood seeped out for quite a while before the blood came out was red. Bullet. Yingkong held out her hand. Zheng was confused for a bit then remembered what the army did in movies. In a situation without disinfectants, they used gunpowder to burn the injury to prevent any infections. But isn't there alcohol? The hemostasis spray can disinfect also. You don't need to use such rough methods, Zheng said. Yingkong's hand remained there and shook her head. The injury is bitten by a werewolf. There's definitely remains of the virus. Normal alcohol can't completely wipe it out. Bullet. Zheng felt that he couldn't do anything against her will. She was so calm the whole time as if she didn't care about pain or death. She didn't even blink when he was cutting the black flesh off. This calmness had gained his respect. Without any other choice, Zheng took out a few bullets from the ring. She lightly flipped open the shells and poured the gunpowder on the injury. Then held the Hellfire Fang close. A flame instantly flared up as fire met gunpowder. But it went out just as fast as it came. The shoulder that was bleeding became charred. Yingkong fell unconscious from the pain and her face was covered in sweat, which made Zheng take pity on her. He sighed then poured alcohol on her shoulder. The cooling sensation of the liquid woke her up. She looked at Zheng calmly then let him continue. By the time Zheng wrapped up Yingkong's shoulder, she had fallen into a deep sleep. This aloof little girl of an assassin looked so pure and innocent during her sleep, like the girl next door. Zheng carried her back to the room and saw that most of the others were sleeping, aside from Zero, G and O'Connell staying alert. After the fight in the museum and the chase, it was normal for anyone to feel exhausted. Resting was the best way to recover. So, let's have a peaceful sleep, then we will run for our lives. It was nighttime when Zheng woke up. Though the first one awake wasn't him. Hung was fiddling around with the longbow, and the noise woke Zheng up. He saw Zheng and apologized with a smile. Sorry to wake up you, you want to sleep a little longer. Zheng looked around and asked, where is Zero and G? Up at the roof. Zero said he wants to take a look at the distribution of the mummy guards. G went along to protect him. You really don't need more sleep. Zheng shook his head and looked around at the others who were still sleeping. Most of them were in fact awake but were resting with their eyes closed, or perhaps they didn't want to get up too early and face reality. After all, they only had a little more time before being chased by that monster or Team India. Their lives would no longer be in their own hands. Wow. Did you make it yourself? Zheng got interested in this young man. Back then when Hung Lu asked for a gun, he also wanted a gun for Hung, while excluding the two other newbies. This was enough to make Zheng notice him. Hung smiled coyly and said, "This is a genuine English hardwood longbow. How could I make it with my bare hands? When I went with O'Connell to the black market and saw a merchant selling this work of art, I had to ask O'Connell to buy it. The merchant also gave us several arrows. This is actually the first time I am using this kind of bow. I wonder how strong it is and the precision." Zero and G pushed open the door as he was talking. Zero was able to walk at will by now, but judging by the sweat on his forehead, the chest pain was difficult to bear. G's eyes were bloodshot. He kept massaging his temples as he walked. As Zero began to describe the distribution of the mummy guards below, everyone else opened their eyes and came over. Basically that's it. The square is full of zombies. The majority of the mummy guards are at the entrance to Cairo and the port. About several hundred of them patrolling by the port. We will have to get through these several hundred mummy guards, not to mention the endless numbers of zombies, if we are to get to the port. Wait. O'Connell suddenly said. He drew a circle on the floor. This is where we are. To the east is the port, and here, there shouldn't be any guards to the west, right? There's a garage here. Haha, you get what I mean? We will steal a few cars then drive to the port. The guards shouldn't be able to stop cars moving at high speed. The only thing to worry about is Imhotep, if he's as powerful as you said. Zheng muttered, Imhotep should only have sucked 2 people dry by now. Then, he's not completely revived. Lan pulled a cage from the corner. Inside it was a black cat. The cute little cat seemed to have just woken up and looked at everyone warily when Lan brought it out from the cage. Let's go. Mission escape from Cairo. Zheng was very grateful had exchanged for the ring. Not only was it a powerful weapon against spiritual beings, but he could store a lot of things in it, like magical bullets. Normal magical bullets were inexpensive. The only issue was that they are difficult to carry in large quantities. But the NA ring eliminated this drawback. He easily took out a large stack of magical bullets, and not only did he restock the ammunition for G, Lan, and the others in the group, but also swapped O'Connell and the other characters' bullets with magical ones. Even though their weapons weren't powerful, but every little bit helped in this circumstance. He wouldn't skimp on just some bullets. As they walked down the stairs of the clock tower, they got more and more anxious the closer they were to the ground. It wasn't limited to the normal people like the characters and newbies. Zheng and the veterans were also getting nervous. A thick wooden door blocked their way on the ground floor. Lan immediately cast the acceleration and stamina buffs on everyone. Zheng took out mummy fragments and sands and the Book of the Dead, then chanted the spell to create 4 mummy guards. The newbies watched it in shock, until Zheng kicked open the door, waking them up with the explosive sound. He charged out, spraying with his gun, knocking at least 10 zombies near him to the ground. The magical bullets were indeed effective. These corpses ignited and several seconds later became a pile of ash. Zheng turned around and said hastily, O'Connell, take the lead. O'Connell nodded. He looked at Evelyn, and without a word pulled out his 2 guns and walked in front of the group. Everyone followed behind him without talking. But to their surprise there was not even a single zombies on the way. It wasn't until they made a turn through a valley that they saw a wall of people blocking the way. It was a wide street, at least several thousand zombies packed the whole area, and 10 mummy guards were standing on the walls to the side. Pick up your guns. If you don't want to die, then give all you have. Zheng held onto the submachine gun with his left hand and the progressive knife with his right. He shouted while firing at the mummies. Everyone followed suit and opened fire at the zombies and mummies. Yet these zombies looked just like normal humans. There were even some kids, 11 or 12 years old. O'Connell and some of the others hesitated until G yelled for them to get out of the way as he pulled out a heavy machine gun. The same one he used in the last movie. As soon as the others moved to the side, he opened fire. The sound of the heavy machine gun felt much more powerful than Zheng's gun, and of course its power was frightening. The corpses were falling like flies, the mummies couldn't close in on them either. G gave off the feeling that he was afire. He held onto the machine gun with one arm and the bullets with the other. He kept shouting as he ran forward. He's feeling sad, the person that carried the bullets for him last time has died. Zheng sighed, then looked at the man in black who was carrying Tenji's body. Everyone knew the rational thing to do was leave his body in the clock tower, but they didn't have the heart to just leave it there. So everyone decided to find a place to bury him. According to the man in black, this was also how a warrior could obtain peace. Fortunately, it seemed like Imhotep's curse had no effect on Tenji. His body remained in eternal sleep, yet Zheng couldn't forget the scene of his death, and those last words of his. It didn't take long for the heavy machine gun to consume all its bullets, but that was enough to kill all the mummy guards. Only around 1,000 corpses were still walking toward them. Everyone fired their guns without holding back. For a while, the sound of gunshots filled the air. They cleared a path through the zombies and moved through the street to the garage. Jonathan began running to the sports cars as soon as they entered the garage, but Zheng and O'Connell held out their arms simultaneously and carried him to a minibus. He yelled in resistance, "Hey, sports cars. Sports cars run faster and also more expensive." Zheng replied, "I will give you 5 gold bars after we survive. Enough for you to buy one." Jonathan paused for a moment, then immediately said, 5, 6, 6 is a lucky number. Zheng and O'Connell looked at each other, then threw Jonathan into the bus. O'Connell began to look for the key after they all got on, but Zheng punched the keyhole, then pulled out the wires and twirled them together. The bus immediately started up. O'Connell laughed aloud, "You're too violent." Zheng shrugged. "You will be more violent when you drive. Let's go, our buddies are here." The entrance to the garage was filled with zombies, just as he said. Furthermore, several dozen mummy guards were rushing straight at them from the wall behind them. O'Connell drove the bus right into the corpses, splattering blood and flesh all over the place. O'Connell shouted, F***CK, so violent, what is this? It wasn't nearly this bloody even when I was in Verdun. Evelyn. Get in the center of everyone, don't look out the window. Evelyn waved her hand in protest but still stood in the center of them. The bus slowed down as it drove further and further into the zombies. These zombies were not retarded like the ones in Resident Evil. They kept trying to jump on the vehicle and some of them were hanging from the windows. 0G, we will attack the mummies. Everyone else attack the zombies around us. Hurry. Zheng shouted, then opened fire against the incoming mummies. The submachine gun wasn't too effective. It needed over 10 shots to destroy a mummy. Before long, the mummies had closed within 10 meters of them. Fortunately, the additional firepower from 0 and G, especially with the accuracy from 0, helped them destroy all the mummies before they reached the bus. The trio let out sighs of relief. They turned around to see Lan leading the rest of the group firing at the zombies. Sit tight. O'Connell shouted when he saw the numbers around the bus lessen. He pushed the gas pedal all the way down. The bus finally drove out of the crowd into an open road. Jonathan and the Americans only got to celebrate for a moment, then the bus made a turn and an endless sea of zombies stood across them. At least 10,000 zombies. Even worse was the number of mummies standing by the walls and roofs. They were in the hundreds. Oh my god. O'Connell was shocked and beaten. He had unconsciously let off the gas pedal. No one could find the courage to keep driving into that. Zheng clenched his teeth then said to O'Connell, trust me. Drive into them. F***CK, go in at full speed. He took out the Book of the Dead and started chanting. O'Connell also clenched his teeth and stepped on the gas pedal. The bus drove into the sea of zombies with resolution. When the mummies closed in on the bus, a whirlwind sent them up the air. This wind grew stronger by the second until it became a tornado. The bus was in the center of this tornado. The zombies and mummies were sucked in by the tornado. Their weight was so insignificant to its power. In contrast, the bus weight helped keep them on the ground. Zheng only created a small tornado, otherwise the bus and everyone inside it would have become victims also. O'Connell shouted in a frenzy as he drove forward, crushing numerous zombies. With the addition of 0 and G's shooting, there were not that many zombies left in front of them by the time they drove out from the tornado. Zheng let out a sigh of relief then felt exhausted, as if the Book of the Dead drained both his blood energy and stamina. This small version tornado still drained all of his blood energy. It was a natural disaster after all. Let's go. To the port. In an inn on the other end of Cairo, Shania suddenly said, Leader, found them. They seized a minibus and are now driving to the port. The Americans and main characters are also in the bus. Shiva, monk, sat in the center of the team with his legs crossed and a golden Dharma chakra, Buddhist symbolism, on his hand. How did you suddenly find them? Weren't you unable to do so? Can this be a trap? Or did someone hack into your mental network again and give you an illusion? Shania blushed and pondered for a moment. Leader, I don't think it's an illusion this time. Imhotep also appeared. Should we get in contact with him? Not now. We should meet him face to face as a sign of respect, but I am still worried about the Psyche Force user in their team. If he can modify your scan then he should have a higher mental capacity stat than you, but then why didn't he use it to attack us? And his Psyche mask, on their location, just suddenly disappeared. He wouldn't be. Shiva showed a sign of surprise. It shouldn't be possible. He couldn't be their guide. How can anyone reach the second stage of the unlocked mode all by himself? How did that man, Zhenjia, establish himself as the leader? Just with the acceptance of his teammates? Don't kid me, is the Psyche Force user the guide? How is it possible that someone reached the second stage and the guide hasn't disappeared? That's not possible. Shania asked, Leader, what should we do now? Shiva paused for a moment. Of course we have to follow them. Erod, how is your condition? In a dark corner of the room, Erod said calmly, not that good. The people around here became zombies before I had the chance to hunt them. Recovery of my lungs is at 70%. If I have to transform, I can only retain 70% of my normal power, but it should be enough for close combat. Then let's go see them off. Aren't they hoping to get to the port? Let this journey become the path to the netherworld. Zheng's group wasn't feeling well. Although the zombies became ashes after getting shot by magical bullets, they still had normal bodies until then. The ground was filled with blood and ground meat when the bus crushed them. In fact, crushed flesh stuck all over the bottom of the bus. The bloody and rotten smell made Evelyn, Zuiyu, and Liang vomit several times already. Zheng had recovered some strength. He stood behind O'Connell and said, faster, drive faster. How much longer till we reach the port? O'Connell was heavily stressed, and snapped at him with irritation, F***CK. Stop nagging me. Only 3 to 5 more minutes following this road. I believe we can be faster if there are no more zombies. Zheng smiled bitterly. He stored a lot of magical bullets in the ring, but the ring was only 1.5 cubic meters big after all. Their gun barrels were smoking from all the shooting. You could tell how many bullets they'd consumed. There were less than a half of the bullets left. That was why he wanted to know how much longer they needed. As he was planning to reload his gun, he felt something and looked toward a tall building. At the same time Yingkong and Zero also looked over there. A half-rotten and bald mummy appeared on the top of the building, Imhotep. O'Connell. Don't let the bus flip over. Zheng only had time to shout this before Imhotep transformed into a sandstorm. Everyone fired at him without thinking, but even the magical bullets looked ineffective against the sandstorm. The bullets went straight through it, but the sandstorm had already surrounded the bus. O'Connell began yelling and held onto the wheel tightly. He stared right at the road in front of him with all his attention. Yet his vision was limited under the sandstorm. He left his safety to everyone else. Though Evelyn's screams made his shoulders shiver. The sandstorm came and went fast. It soon gathered together and reformed into Imhotep, but this time with a person in his hand. He was holding one of the Americans. The American was horrified and started howling. Everyone else could only watch as Imhotep opened that rotten mouth and sucked him dry. Several seconds later, the American became a dry corpse. At the same time Imhotep recovered more of his flesh, and gradually became more humanoid. Cat. Lan, bring the cat out. Zheng shouted as he pulled the other American to his back. He fired at Imhotep, but the magical bullets were still ineffective. They went straight through his body like normal bullets. Imhotep looked at the bullets' holes that recovered instantly, then transformed into a sandstorm again, sweeping at them and that last American behind Zheng. Yingkong, your dagger. Seeing that Lan was too slow to take the cat out in time, Zheng threw his gun away, then signaled Yingkong as he jumped at the sandstorm. He channeled Qi to the Na ring, formed a translucent force field around his fist, then struck the sandstorm with his left hand. With a boom, the sandstorm was knocked back as if it hit a wall. Zheng was also knocked back, crashing into G and Zero. The sandstorm returned to its human form behind the bus. Imhotep knelt on one knee. His shoulder kept burning and corroding away. The Na ring was indeed very effective against spiritual beings, being able to damage Imhotep when the magical bullets couldn't. Yingkong pulled out her dagger at once, a dagger enclosed in a flame. The mummy guards summoned by Zheng immediately backed off as if they were scared of the dagger. Even Imhotep frowned as he saw it. Secure yourselves. O'Connell yelled as he slammed down on the accelerator. The bus ran forward at full speed, knocking over a bunch of barrels and some zombies. It left Imhotep behind as he slowly recovered his body. Imhotep opened his mouth and roared. An endless stream of flies came out of his mouth, forming a black cloud that flew towards the bus. Evelyn and Zuiyu screamed in fear immediately. Lan didn't scream, but her face still paled. Yingkong was the only girl who remained indifferent. As the flies closed in on them, Hung took off his shirt and swung at the flies. Zheng and the others quickly followed suit, even the man in black took off his robe to help. Although these flies couldn't deal much damage, they still looked disgusting and blocked their vision. O'Connell had slowed down the bus, and even so, he was still driving into poles and streetlights. Suddenly they heard chanting in ancient Egyptian. Evelyn immediately said, "He's summoning mummies." That Egyptian means before she could finish, a mummy dropped onto the front of the bus with a bang and slashed at O'Connell with its sword. O'Connell quickly turned the steering wheel and flung the mummy off. Everyone in the bus lost their stability at the same time. However, the flies were still sticking to the bus. G got back up from the floor and cursed, F***CK, if I can make it back alive, I will stock up on bug sprays and bug repellent incenses. Bug sprays, repellent incenses? Right, repellent incense. Lan yelled with excitement as she took out 2 smoke grenades from her bag. She pulled the rings without hesitation. A thick smoke came out from the grenades, but since the bus was still driving, the smoke floated to the back. The flies were falling in clusters, and soon enough, O'Connell gained back some vision. They didn't have a chance to celebrate. They could see the port, but the path was filled with countless zombies and mummies on the walls and roofs. At least over 1,000 mummies. Maybe it was due to Imhotep recovering more of his power, or had assembled all the mummies in Cairo. Anyway, the mummies in front of them could form a small army. Everyone looked at Zheng, but he could only force a smile. I can't summon another tornado. I've only recovered a quarter of my blood energy. Even if I summon it, it would have limited power, at least not enough to send so many mummies flying. Then what should we do? Everyone said. Then they realized they had made Zheng their core. Zheng took a deep breath and took out the remaining magical bullets from his ring. O'Connell, go. Don't worry about anything. We will die if we stay here anyway, so just go and bet our lives on this shit. Go for the port, it's our only hope. O'Connell also took a deep breath, then he stubbornly slammed the accelerator, and drove right into the sea of zombies. Everyone fell silent as they got nearer and nearer to the zombies. Zheng picked up his gun and sprayed at the street, then everyone else also opened fire. The mummies also began to jump at the bus. Despite the firepower from Zheng, G, and Zero, there were too many mummies. When the first one got on the top of the bus, many others followed. Then a sword stabbed into the bus from the top. Zheng clenched his teeth. He held onto the gun with his mouth, opened the window, then jumped on top of the bus. His eyes went out of focus, signaling that he entered the unlock mode. Over a dozen mummies stood on top of the bus. It was as though Zheng's appearance surprised them for a moment before the 2 mummies nearest to him attacked. But his reaction speed was incredible. He took the gun from his mouth and fired while he was still in the air and crushed those 2 mummies and several near them. Zheng's power increased by several folds even with just the first stage of the unlock mode. Ever since he reached the second stage, it was easy for him to enter the first stage. He just had to believe he was in danger. Furthermore, the after effect had lessened by a lot. In other words, he could enter the first stage with impunity now. Zheng easily eliminated the mummies on top of the bus, but many more were jumping toward the bus every minute. He could only focus all his attention on these mummies. Ta-da! Bullet shells were falling from his submachine gun onto the bus like rain. Before a minute had passed, he had emptied the magazine. Then he started to attack with his left hand and the Na ring. O'Connell! Hurry! Hope is right there! Zheng yelled as he moved within the mummies. Every strike would hit 1 or 2 mummies. A complete hit could kill a mummy, and even a scratch could damage it due to the effect of the Na ring. However, it also consumed his chi very fast at this state. Even if a strike only took a little bit of chi, his chi was almost empty after killing over 100 mummies. The sandstorm was coming at the bus from behind again. This time seemingly more ferocious than before. They could make out a face in the center of it. The huge face opened its mouth trying to swallow the bus, but with a feint. Meow. The face flew to the top of a building on the side as if it saw something horrifying. Then it transformed into Imhotep's human form. Zheng let out a sigh of relief. Within just 1 moment of letting his guard down, a mummy slashed at his shoulder with a curved sword. He dodged as soon as he felt the pain, so the sword only carved out part of his flesh and didn't hit the bone. Zheng didn't dare to think about other things anymore. He crushed that mummy, then focused his attention back onto the fight on hand. The minibus was getting closer and closer to the port. Just 1 more turn and it could drive straight to the port. We came at the right moment. Team India stood on top of a building and looked at the bus below. Shiva then looked at Imhotep. Would stop moving forward. He laughed coldly and said, "Cat. Lamua, kill the cat. Shinea, connect to Lama's mind and show him the cat's location." Shinea nodded. The young man also closed his eyes and a needle floated on his palm. Then the needle disappeared, and when it reappeared several seconds later, it was stained with blood. Shania frowned and said, "The Psyche mask appeared again once the cat died. I can't sense the minds of the people in the bus anymore." Shiva looked as Imhotep transformed into a sandstorm again and smiled. "Doesn't matter. If Lomo had shown any intention of killing their members, the Psyche mask would have appeared instantly. It was better to just kill the cat and let Imhotep kill Team China for us." Suddenly they heard a howl from the side. Erod, who had been quietly standing there the whole time, began howling. His hair started to lengthen and body enlarged. Shiva immediately said, "Shania, control his mind. If we join the fight now, Imhotep may see us as enemies. With so many mummies here we will get in a rough battle." Shania frowned and her face was growing pale. She spit out blood when Erod became a complete werewolf and ran away. "Leader, I can't. His mind has fallen into madness, I can't control it." Shiva sighed. The mummies were coming at them from all sides just as he had expected. It was too late now. Zheng had his attention on the mummies when suddenly he felt an aggressive killing intent coming from behind him. He's only half turned when a huge shadow jumped at him. The huge figure took him off the bus and into the sea of zombies. When the two of them stopped rolling, they were already 10 meters away from the bus. It wasn't until now that Zheng recognized the figure as the blonde Dr. Erod, or rather the werewolf Erod. He was howling and slicing at all the zombies near him with his scalpels. His fingers and hands were moving at a speed barely visible to human eyes. The zombies were sliced into pieces only several centimeters big. Then the werewolf jumped at Zheng and slashed at him with the scalpels at an extreme speed. Zheng's premonition of danger immediately reached its limit. The killing intent felt like blades. He had no doubt he would become a minced piece of meat in the next second just like the zombies. Zheng entered the second stage before the scalpels reached him. He raised his left hand to block at the werewolf's wrist while he punched the werewolf in the stomach with his right hand. His muscles expanded suddenly when he attacked. Boom. It was as though he had hit a thick tire. His left hand felt numb after blocking. Like it was struck with metal. After missing his attack, the werewolf jumped up and reached for Zheng's head with his legs. Zheng took out his knife and slashed at the werewolf's head. Neither of them backed off. Both sides were in the unlock mode and had put their lives on the line. They couldn't spare their attention for anything other than killing each other. Imhotep flowed into the bus, seized the last American, and dragged him out. Yingkong entered the unlock mode as she followed him outside. She kicked at the window of the bus and used the force to jump at Imhotep. Then stabbed her dagger into Imhotep's heart before he could drain the American. A flame burned from his chest. Imhotep dropped the American off as he screamed. Yingkong immediately kicked the American back into the bus, then ran toward Zheng and the werewolf. The werewolf's scalpels had gotten a few hits on Zheng's chest and stomach. Blood was spilling from him like water. The werewolf's arm also got cut off. Yingkong rushed in unexpectedly. The werewolf was so focused on Zheng that when he finally felt the attack coming from behind, Yingkong's dagger had already stabbed into his chest. Then he punched her away and ran before Zheng could attack again. Zheng had no choice but to go after Yingkong and save her from the sea of zombies. Zheng carried Yingkong while slashing at the mummies with his knife. The bus was getting further and further away from them. Zheng chased after the bus as fast as he could. At the same time the bus had made its last turn. There was only one last straight road to the port. It was a roller coaster of emotions for them during the whole ride. Like now that there was no ships by the port. Several ships were over 100 meters deep into the river. Even the nearest ship was still 10 meters away from the port. Zheng stood there in shock. A sense of despair overtook him and everyone on the bus as the sea of zombies and several hundred mummies closed in from behind. They had nowhere to go. "O'Connell. Believe in me. Go. Don't think about anything and just smash the gas pedal flat down to the ground." Zheng clenched his teeth and shouted. He ran at full speed toward the bus. In the driver's seat O'Connell began shouting, pushed the throttle down, and drove the bus crazily towards the river. Everyone felt lost as they looked at the ship that was sailing away. Zheng took out the Book of the Dead as he ran. He chanted a spell Tenji taught him, a spell that could control rocks and soil. It could be used to bury corpses or change the terrain. The road in front of the bus gradually elevated. Everyone noticed the abnormality but no one said anything. They all stared at that ship on the river. O'Connell's voice became hoarse from the shouting. He kept his foot tight on the gas pedal and his hands on the wheel. Then the bus drove onward on the elevated road. The Book of the Dead drained Zheng's stamina with the spell. He stumbled and was about to fall when Yingkong jumped off him and carried him on her shoulder. The little girl exerted amazing strength at this moment. She carried Zheng with one arm and took out a hook rope with her other hand and threw it at the bus. The hook caught the window and pulled the two of them off the ground as the bus flew toward the ship on the river toward Hope.